We're going to be doing the Piers Morgan debate with the Jubilee Atheists and a few Christians, Jay Dyer, Andrew Wilson. This should be somewhat interesting. I will say that the Jubilee debate with Jordan Peterson was extremely underwhelming because he just gave a terrible account for himself and Christianity itself. Not that I expected much, but it wasn't very good. So let's get into this. I'm expecting Danny and Parker to come out with their retard arguments, but let's see. Let's give them a fair shot.
You're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh,
Alright, we don't
either
care.
you're
We
a
already
Christian
saw
or
this.
you're not. Which one?
Circular?
Because you added no content to the.
Whatever.
Right, you're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Well now, in the wake of that video, one of Peterson's young inquisitors posted on X, Peterson was no Christian. Let's move on. Are there any actual
true.
Christians that
He's
want
not.
to debate? Which is quite the challenge. But one that, of course, we on Uncensored are only too keen to facilitate. So making
I
their
would love to
Uncensored
debate Danny
debut
and
from the
Parker.
Danny Phil Talk channel, Danny Shaw, and Parker from the Parker Get a Job channel. And we've arranged for them to take
Is that a Bernie Sanders flag? Okay.
on two of the most notorious and fearsome debaters on the internet, who also happen to be conservative Christians, the king of blood sport debating, Andrew Wilson from The Crucible, and the equally forthright author, comedian, and commentator, Jay Dyer from the Jay Dyer channel. Welcome to all four of you. Well, let me start with you, Parker. Were you surprised by the reaction to what went down with Jordan Peterson?
Actually, no. I was actually expecting this to happen, as I knew before this, as I watched the Alex O'Connor debate against Jordan Peterson, that he was very, very not likely to, like being associated with Christianity. So I knew actually going into this that I was going to
This is this is probably the only point I'm ever going to agree with Danny and Parker on.
ask him a question
He's not a
specifically
Christian and he
about
sucks at
whether or not he
debating.
believes this to be the case, and that he would likely be not very upfront with his answer. So I actually kind of expected there to be a response like this. Now, I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, as there are literally tens of millions of views on clips associated with mine and Danny's against Jordan Peterson all over social media. So it's
And that's the other sad part. Like that really made Danny and Parker seem like smart people, just for pointing out the obvious.
actually really cool to see that, everyone across the board, whether it be Christians, atheists, Muslims, right, etc., actually see that like he's really not wanting to answer the question there because he doesn't want to be associated with Christianity for some reason.
Well, it's because he's a Jungian Gnostic. And by the way, I like my system has a lot of Jungian aspects to it that are modified. So I like Jung. I think Jung made a lot of great contributions. And Peterson is like the modern day Jung without all the innovation. And so he says things that are cool. He says things that are interesting, makes good points. But when it comes to Christianity and debating, that's not his thing. Because he comes from a psychological point of view. Most people don't even understand it. I remember watching the Peterson Jubilee debate, and the whole time, it was just 2 hours of people not understanding that he's not a Christian. He's a Gnostic Christian who believes God is consciousness in the collective archetype sense. Okay, and that's like obvious to me, but they don't understand that, and they're still talking about it. Like, this is a very basic thing to me. I don't, like, maybe I'm very tone deaf to average people, but like, okay, yeah, Jordan Peterson isn't a Christian. He's like a Jungian Gnostic. Wow. That's so interesting. Like, whoa. It's not.
And Danny, I mean, you were the smart ass in the room, according to Jordan. What's been your reaction to the fallout?
I'm generally happy that that people can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are, right? Here we have Peterson saying things like, yeah, I think Jesus might have resurrected, but I don't know what that means. Yeah, I might be a Christian in some sense.
Yeah, because he's speaking in a symbolic way. It's not literal. So, again, I don't understand why people keep talking about this. Like, it's so obvious. Like, yeah, he's a Gnostic.
One of a kind
Yes.
Christian. It's all wishy-washy. We're all frustrated, and I think that the video is the culmination of that frustration.
Okay, well, the good news, like I told you, is we found two far from shy Christians to take you on in this arena. Andrew Wilson, let me start with you. What was your reaction to these two and their showdown with Jordan Peterson?
I mean, I kind of have to agree with Danny a little bit. It's like, like people have been wanting this guy to take the position on whether he's a Christian or not a Christian forever. On the right, the left, center, basically across the board. Now, I'll always be in some ways grateful to Jordan Peterson. He was one of the first who kind of started the trend of standing up to the pronouns people, which was pretty epic to watch. But, ultimately,
We get two completely
Which
different
one?
reactions from that, and I'm gonna be focusing on the details in this debate because, like, is Jordan Peterson a Christian? No, I think that's it. So I'm gonna make this interesting for you guys, okay? Because this is not a baseline interesting discussion,
was pretty epic to
at least
watch.
yet.
But
So we get smiling here. So this is the face of like, I get free content for my TikTok, you know, free clip farming, free views, and then this face is he's actually kind of like disappointed in to hear what he said.
ultimately,
And
he's
there's
kind of a
like
shell
contempt, smirk, eyebrow nod. Kind of on the same page, but from different
of
angles.
his former self. He didn't look great going through that debate. He looked kind of run down. I think that him being on with the Daily Wire probably hasn't been great for him. He's not kind of he doesn't have the kind of edge that he used to have. But ultimately, I mean, I was actually kind of glad to see it. It's about time we know: are you or aren't you? Get off the shit or get off the pot. Essentially, right? Are you a Christian or aren't you a Christian? That's a fair question.
And Jay, I mean, ultimately, these two young men on the panel today, they're sworn atheists. You obviously are not. So if you were actually conducting a debate about their atheism against your Christianity, how would you take them on, given what happened to Jordan?
Nice. Okay.
Well, it depends
Here we
on
go.
what you mean, Piers. Depends on what you mean.
I thought he lost his voice, but no, that's good.
You know,
How would I take them on? Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could critique an atheist position. Most of the time, I argue from the three branches of philosophy: epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Those are just the three branches of any worldview, and everybody has a worldview, whether they know it consciously or not. So I would critique the foundations of the atheist materialist worldview to see if it's rational, if it's coherent, if it can provide a justification for knowledge or ethical oughts. So I think that would have been a much better route. In fact, Peterson used to kind of take that approach when he debated Sam Harris. He would call out the is-ought problem with Sam Harris. When he debated Matt Dillahunty, he would call out the exact same types of preconditions for a
Yeah, and that's one thing about the Jubilee debate going in. I was hoping that he would lean more into that, because toward the start, I saw him kind of going into like a presuppositional approach, like, oh, no, maybe this is actually gonna go well, and then he kind of abandoned it. So, yeah, this debate's gonna have a lot of is-ought and other foundational points. That's the whole point of Andrews and Jay's debate, and that's also the position I take. I'm a presuppositionalist like them. And Danny and Parker have no clue what they're doing when they're in that discussion because they don't really understand philosophy beyond, not even philosophy 101, just, TikTok 60-second clips level philosophy.
worldview issue that I used to do, or I usually do. So I think that'd be a better route than just sort of having this ambiguous, Jungian position of non-committal, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to you, Parker and Danny, that I've interviewed Jordan Peterson a lot, maybe 5, 6 times on Uncensored. Quite long interviews, often quite emotional. He's an emotional guy. I would disagree with Andrew about him losing his edge. I think he's still got the edge. I also think that, putting aside the whole debate about Christianity and whether he is or not, he's always been oddly ambiguous about it to someone who's so unambiguous about everything else. But that's his right. He's entitled to do that. As a force for good, though, for young men, I do think that in comparison, for example, to Andrew Tate, that Jordan Peterson has been a far better influence over the minds of young men of your kind of age than someone like Andrew Tate would ever be. Would you agree with that?
I feel like they both serve different purposes. I don't think either of them are really that great in terms of being an influence, and not because they don't say things that are smart, not because they don't say things that are right and bring up key issues. But the problem is that they're very unbalanced in their approaches. So Peterson, he's like this geek who knows about Jungian psychology and doesn't know anything about philosophy or physical fitness and whatnot. And then Tate, you basically get the complete opposite. Although, I mean, honestly, Okay, if I had a complete moron, like a complete moronic base, I think Peterson would be better. But if I was like halfway intelligent, I think Tate would be a better base.
Parker?
I actually would agree with that, although the bar is literally in hell.
Right. I mean, you must see some positives in the general messaging that Jordan gives for young men about wanting to improve their lives, wanting to empower themselves, opening up and so on. And do you accept that about him?
I think it's good to open up, and I think it's good for like men to like want to improve their lives, but we also need to be very specific on like what is improving towards their lives. And I honestly don't think that like Jordan Peterson, like within all respects, would be upholding that. But sure, I can say he's better than someone like Andrew Tate. Like I think that's pretty obvious.
Danny, what's your view of Andrew Tate?
This is like such a boring like start, bro. Like, oh my god.
And Jordan Peterson when it comes to their influence on young men? Because it is huge.
Yeah,
We're both of them. I can tell you, when I walk around, most people under 25 who are male come up and they ask me either about Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And again, I already explained. I'm not like a super hater of either of them, but like that's like your grandiose, like, oh yeah, this is the person that knows the most. Like, really? Either of them? Like, come on. Like, maybe someone a little bit smarter, a little more like well-rounded. Because here's the thing, like, even most people who are gonna come up and do videos like I am here, I mean, first of all, they're not gonna make the points I'm able to make. They're not able to say it the way I'm able to say it. But then they're not gonna be able to talk about other things like working out, for example, taking care of your body through diet, whatnot, articulating yourself, woman, blah blah blah, all these different things, Christianity, etc. So, I think the biggest problem with influencers now is that they're not polymaths. They don't encompass everything that someone could need. Instead, they encompass like one aspect, and we need people that encompass certain aspects. But the problem is that with how cult of personality works, everyone just ends up fixating on that one thing and end up extrapolating it through their own retarded assumptions to everything in their life, and then that just leads to poor results.
Yeah, I feel like the question is like asking a Republican, is Joe Biden better than like Mussolini, right? I mean, it's such a vast difference. I would say that it seems like that Jordan Peterson has benefited people, mostly in the psychology realm, like, the whole 12 rules for life and stuff, which a lot of those rules seems to be rules that my grandma could tell me. But granted, the point is that, yeah, he's probably helped people. I have no
And even when people talk about, oh, Peterson did such a great thing, it's like they're not even talking about his like in-depth Jungian things, which he doesn't really articulate in a way that's high level and different. He kind of shoehorns it into like typical speech, if you will, like normie speech, to where you don't really understand the nuances of it. And then it's like, you gotta make your bed. I can't do as good of an impression as Jay, but make your bed in whatever high-pitched, compressed voice he has. It's just like, really? Like, Jordan Peterson changed my life. How? He told me to make my bed.
problem saying that.
All right, Andrew, let's turn to some other issues here. One is Pride Month. Now, my view of this is I don't understand why we need a whole month for Pride. I don't even get an hour as a straight guy. So why do we need a month for Pride? And it's not because I'm remotely homophobic, because I'm not. I'm the complete opposite. I've always absolutely supported gay rights. I just don't get why we need to have a month of Pride. Beam's creatine is America's #1. It's made by a company.
Well, Pride's always been completely astroturfed. I mean, to be honest, right from the very beginning, it's been astroturfed. It was always pumped full of government money, NGO funding. It was pumped full of corporate money. There was an article that came out, you can find in the Drudge Report, it came out today from, I believe it was Daily Telegram. It's pretty interesting. They went over, a lot of the modern Trump administration, what they have done with their executive orders. A lot of companies have begun moving away from trying to kind of fund this, and it hasn't been popular for the last couple of years anyway. There's been a lot of pushback on various large corporations, companies, and NGOs for trying to pump kind of artificially these organizations. One of the things that article points out, which I tend to agree with, is that, hey, look, ultimately, when these companies are doing this, people lose trust for them. You remember there was a big thing with Target not that long ago. Anytime this comes to light, there's actually a backlash. People can kind of see that it's artificially held up There's no reason for it. It's silly. It has never really been about gay rights. It's
What do you
been
mean
about
there's no
weird.
reason for it? What do you mean?
Okay, so again, I feel like they're not going to talk about the actual smart, in-depth things about this, but he kind of touched on it there, right? Pride Month, like, they're going to portray Pride Month like, oh, well, it's a bunch of people expressing themselves in a month. It's like, no, it's a bunch of government, other, like, government's a very catch-all term for other people who are basically making decisions that make the world go around. Okay, we'll put it like that. A bunch of government funding into a bunch of groups in order to make these pride parades happen, to not only create division, but also to push a narrative. Okay, and it's very funny because this guy has a Bernie Sanders poster in the background, or banner, or whatever you want to call that thing. And Bernie always talks about the bankers, which I agree with. When you clip Bernie Sanders talking about bankers, I agree. Just when you get into other things, I don't agree. But does he not know that the bankers fund these pride parades? The same people that, I mean, if he supports Bernie, surely, you know, he's against the bankers. I mean, the bankers love pride. They love it. Just like how they fund wars, they funded communism, they funded Hitler, all these different things, right? So, well, I'm not going to get into World War II and the question of, you know, that stuff. I'm not going to get into that, all right? Not the video for it, unless they end up talking about it somehow. But yeah, I feel they're just going to talk about, maybe they'll get into like the moral status of pride, which I hope they do, because it's supposed to be like a Christian versus atheist debate. But yeah, I just hope it's not a bunch of like, you think being gay is bad? I hope it's not just that.
It's
What do you mean there's
it's
no
been well because it's
What do
always
you mean there's
really
no
been
reason
about,
for it, right?
Yeah, I'm
They're
trying to
bullies
answer-
like you.
You want me to answer
right?
the
Oh, someone's getting offended, or he's trying to push a narrative. Like, and another thing, he seems very nervous. I just look at his movement. He looks offended and
been-
nervous.
well because it's
What do
always
you mean there's
really
no
been
reason
about,
for it, right?
Yeah, I'm
They're
trying to
bullies
an-
like you.
Do you want me to answer?
right?
Do you want me to answer the question or no?
Yeah, you can go ahead, and I'll explain to you why I think there's a reason after.
Okay. Yeah.
You saw that? You can see kind of the movement in the lips. Again, I'm trying to make this interesting because these are very surface level points, right? But get into body language. Again, I mean, who's gonna be able to talk what I talk about and then talk about body language? This is like repression. It's like he has, and there's even a pursing of the lips there, right? So he he feels very boxed in and offended. It's hitting an issue close to home. So I was talking about the difference between this guy and Parker.
Yeah, so there's no real reason for it. It's been about pushing sexual perversions, never really been about anything to do with homosexuals themselves.
Then he has very pronounced micro expressions. It's interesting.
Not having rights or having rights. It's never been about that. It's been about weird gay pride parades and all kinds of weird sexual stuff. It really has never been about that, and that's what the American people think. That's what they see. That's why
I see he's blinking. He's starting to speed up.
but he's moving away from it.
No, I don't think that's true. Look, they're gay people like let's take you for example. You're the reason, right? When I first talked to you, right, we were having a normal debate about I think morality, and then you randomly asked me, "What's your, you know, are you a homosexual?" As to
And you
as if
were,
to put me
right?
down, right? And then
Oh, he is. Okay. Wait, he is?
And you
and
were,
then
right?
also with
But
and
hang on,
Jay Dyer
was
said
I
the same
right
thing.
though? Was I right?
I'm not a homosexual. No, I'm married
You
to
said
a
that you
woman.
were
I'm bisexual.
bisexual. You said that you were
Right.
bisexual. That's
Almost-
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right.
Okay. Same thing. Potato, potato. So, see, but like, you see how I connected that? How he felt personally offended? Because he is. Of course he's personally offended. Right, and I could just tell he didn't. I could tell by the way his micro expressions, body language, etc.
They're gay people like let's take you for example. You're the reason, right?
And-
Look, they're gay people like let's take you for example. You're the reason,
I
right?
thought he
when
pointed
I
to
first talked to
himself.
you,
That was
right,
funny.
we were having a normal debate about I think morality, and then you randomly asked me, "What's your, you know, are you a homosexual?"
He's not hiding it very well. I'll say that.
As to
And you
as if
were,
to put me
right?
down, right? And then
And you were,
then
right?
also with
But
and
hang on,
Jay Dyer
was
said
I
the same
right
thing.
though? Was I right?
I'm not a homosexual. No, I'm
You
married to a
said that you
woman.
were
I'm
bisexual. You said that you were
Right.
bisexual. That's
Homosexual is
homosexual.
not the
So I
same
was
as bisexual.
Bisexual, married to a woman.
there's
You can
certain
learn the
certain
definitions of
ways.
terms.
And I couldn't imagine being a lady. Well, I couldn't imagine being a lady married to him in the first place. But I couldn't imagine being a lady and then knowing that my husband, if he sees like some guy who's jacked or whatever, will start like having thoughts. Because like they're always worried about like a girl walking by who's like hot, right? But now it's a dude. Dude, that's crazy, bro.
But
They look.
the
There's
point is
certain
that
ways that
people
people
like you and
conduct
Jay Dyer,
themselves.
people like you and Jay Dyer, bully LGBTQ
Oh, yeah,
people. That's
everyone's
why
Wow. You're a bully. You're a bully.
bullied, yeah.
pride because of the kind of stigmas that you promote.
Okay, so here's the thing that's so funny.
I see, like, again, like Danny's actually a very good masterclass in body language because he's very expressive with like if you got a textbook out of like different body language patterns, Danny embodies those to such a T because usually people have kind of variations, right? It's a bit hard to tell, but with him, it's like so obvious. You see, like there, he's like every time he says, like he's like compressing like all of his thoughts and all his feelings. When he lets it out, he doesn't really all let it out. Right? It's interesting. It's like psychological things. And you may think like, oh, you're making so many assumptions. Okay, I know. All right? Granted, I don't know for sure, but I know. Okay?
About this is like if both me and Jay Dyer, both of us assumed that you were a homosexual, and both of us were right. That's what's so funny about it. We
Again,
both assumed you were
why you say
gay,
homosexual?
and we were both correct, Andrew. Andrew, is there
The
anything
point is
wrong
that
with
we
him
were
being
happy
gay?
to-
Oh, here we go. So see how what I said earlier? You're saying being gay is wrong? Please, let's not just have this conversation.
Huh?
Is there anything wrong with him being gay?
There's a problem with you guys supporting NGO-funded kind of AstroTurf program to promote rights, which aren't even about promoting rights.
Was that a response to what I just said?
The whole ordeal here is, well, what's the prompt, Parker? The prompt is about pride, and so you're supporting an AstroTurfed, completely AstroTurf NGO-funded thing. It has nothing to do with gay rights at all, and people don't like it, Parker. They don't like it, Parker.
Well, Parker,
So that
I would
wasn't
ask
an
you.
answer
I
to
would
my-
ask Parker this. Look, I mean, look, Andrew, you said some
question.
things which I completely disagree with about this issue. You said women will never truly understand why men find homosexuality so depraved.
Yeah. Yeah. So now he's doing this thing he did to Andrew Tate where he's just listing off a bunch of things that sound bad. Like, dude, man, dude, I would be in so, I would be in so much trouble in quotes if I got on Piers Morgan because I've said things way worse than all this stuff on my silo on Discord. Oh God.
We don't think there's a problem there. We know there's a problem there. I'm a man. I don't find homosexuality
Well, yeah,
remotely
because you're like a liberal, bro. You're a liberal Catholic.
depraved. I think people's sexuality is what it is. So
Yeah, sure. Like the thing is, like if we talk about in the abstract, like just being gay, like you could have guys who are like, oh yeah, I guess so, who don't have a bunch of estrogen pumped into their bodies. They're just like, oh well, it's not a big deal. But then you start talking about like, oh yeah, so it's when a dude and another dude. And one dude sticks their penis in another dude's butthole, and then it's like, ew. Like, there's a natural disgust response for obvious reasons. And there's even the old psychological textbooks I used to read, like, go through. And it would be, like, cases, this is just to make, like, a biological argument, inductive argument, not like a deductive argument, but where a dude would have some kind of testicular issue, like his balls basically didn't work, okay? And he started becoming all camp, right? Right? And then when he got it fixed, he became normal again. So now I'm just making a small point there. I'm not going to expand on it too much because I don't know how YouTube's going to react to that.
So I don't agree with you with some of the
But it's
statements
obvious
you
what I'm saying.
made. However, Parker, I am increasingly bemused why, when there are so many important things in the world to worry about, we devote a whole month to gay pride. Why do we?
There are plenty of things that we specifically have months for to celebrate that I think are incredibly important. This, in this specific example, is incredibly important because of the dehumanization and the bigotry espoused specifically by people like Jay Dyer and Andrew Wilson, and explicitly kicking people off
Again, they're doing this thing where it's kind of like talking in the abstract. Can we get into like a moral, like epistemic argument, please? Because this is so boring.
of their panels because they're gay, right, or because they're homosexual, which I think is incredibly ridiculous.
But you know
right?
as
They
well
have
as I
such a- they
do,
have such
Parker,
a- Can I please finish?
if you
Can I please
compare
finish,
it,
Piers?
look, well, hang on, I would say if you go back 35, 40 years, I would completely agree with you. But the idea that that is still the case today I just don't feel it. Do you? I mean, certainly
Piers,
young
have you
people,
never been on
young
Twitter?
people in particular, do not. It's just moved
Piers,
on. hasn't it?
respectfully,
And personal offense. This is like, what's that word? Forgot. It's not incredulity. Is it incredulity? I think it's incredulity. Yeah, it's incredulity.
how would you know?
Textbook, bro. We like just get this whole entire debate, and like we'll make a psychology textbook about body language, and just take a bunch of screenshots of him and like little gifs and put it in there. Be amazing.
A straight person? Like, how would you? Do you experience
Piers,
it?
look,
Why are you assuming my
I want
sexuality?
to talk about Piers. I want to talk about my
Because you've
experience
talked
when I
about
went
it.
viral. Piers, when I went viral, right? I had people message, saying, calling me the F slur, saying I had a gay lisp, right? When I'm married to a woman, right? If
Dude, you're bi, bro. You're basically, dude. You look at a dude and you go boy yoing yoing, dude. Come on, this whole married to a woman thing. Like, there's been plenty of people who, were in the closet and they were married to a woman. Okay, that's kind of irrelevant, dude. As far as the F's are, like, dude, you make content on social media, bro. People are gonna be mean to you in DMs. Okay, people are mean to me. Who cares? Okay. At a certain point, you just have to go like, well, more fans, I guess, right?
if I'm not even a homosexual, and if people are bullying me for that, I can't imagine what actual homosexuals have to go through. So
What
there's
is it? If you don't like,
Dude, you're just so funny because you can tell you see how he emphasizes so much that he's not a homosexual, but he goes boy and yoing for dudes. You notice that? Someone's not completely secure on what they believe. That's all I'll say.
mind me asking, given it's now been sort of raised, and I'm not quite sure.
And all the expressions of incredulity, like he's been personally offended, like there's something up with this guy mentally.
Are you straight? Are you bisexual? What's the
I'm
deal?
bisexual. I've been married to a woman happily for 5 years, and we're monogamous.
Okay. All
Two
right.
gaytheists. I want to chime in.
All right.
We have two gaytheists on the panel that have said that I've
See,
bullied
like this
them.
kind of
and
behavior. Look at this behavior.
that's
Cavies? Now, I think the reason why Jay did that is because now he said that, now he has the whole floor. I think that's why he did that.
called a joke. That's called a joke,
Yeah,
sensitive
so
man.
funny, Dyer.
Oh my
It's a
God! Look at this
homophobic joke.
behavior. This behavior is
This-
out
Well,
of
you
control.
are two gay thieves,
It's too
so
much
it's
behavior.
not
Bad
very
behavior.
good.
I'm sorry.
Is Parker gay? Is he?
Okay, hold on. Are you guys Christians? I thought we're supposed to be loving to thy neighbor.
Oh my god, here we go with this crap, bro.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
the only
love
thing-
also includes
but-
telling you when it's wrong.
Don't
so.
you love trans people, Parker? You said that you would date a trans person. Remember that? Or
Yeah,
was it-
and what's wrong with that?
I think
Oh,
that
he
you're
isn't?
wrong with that. I guess you are more loving than me than Parker. I wouldn't date a trans person. But,
Okay,
hey,
okay.
he's
Is that
right.
supposed to be
Two
like a
gay
critique of
theists.
me?
So the
Wait,
problem
what
is
happened to being
that
loving?
these guys
I
can't give
asked
an
you as
account
Christians.
for the
I called
good.
for you as Christians to be loving.
All they've
and both of
talked
you did
about
not
is
show
what's
loving.
right.
You just
You don't
showed
know what
being-
loving
you just started
means.
being
You don't even know what
bigoted.
that means.
Oh,
All right,
yeah,
let's
but
not,
now
let's not
loving.
talk over each other because no one can overhear. Jay.
Yeah. So earlier in the first section, when we talked about Peterson, we were talking about what was good for men
Yeah.
and whether Tate was good or Peterson was good. And now we're talking about ethics in the sexual domain, which there's no basis in their worldview for anything
Okay,
to be
all right, here we go.
morally
What's the argument
objectively
for that?
right or wrong, other
Why
than
would
their
anyone
personal
believe that?
preferences. So if there are,
Why would
if there's
anyone
nothing
believe that, Jay?
objectively
You're just
wrong,
making a claim.
there's no reason why bigotry is wrong. Why is bigotry wrong?
Well,
Whoa,
support your
okay.
claim. Don't run from your claim. Support it. Right? We have no. You're saying we as atheists have no basis of morality. Support that.
Yeah, no epistemic.
You see, look at his neck and his mouth.
Right? We have no. You're saying we as atheists have no basis of morality. Support that.
Yeah, no ep.
You see how he released so much tension? Like this guy is, this guy's going through hell right now. Oh my god! But yeah, as far as this, because now we're into the domain where things actually get kind of interesting. Talking about support your claim. Support your claim about atheists not being able to give an account. It's a bit of an interesting way of arguing because the whole point is that the atheist has a position and we're critiquing the position. And then they're asking us to support our critique as if we made the positivist argument. Or we're making that's like a counter argument, right? And there's no problem supporting a counter argument. You would just outline in a way, because it's kind of like, it's like you make a statement, right? And it's not that you're necessarily supporting the statement, you're expanding on the statement, okay? So the expansion of the statement would be, well, you can't give an account of epistemology, ethics, and metaphysics that isn't fallacious. We would say, then ask how. Well, to demonstrate how, I need to know exactly what you would say. Right? That's how the line would go.
Epistemic basis for getting an ought from an is.
Yeah, that's a claim. Okay, well, you're saying atheists
No, it's an
can't
argument.
account
It's a
for
famous
morality,
argument.
right? You're saying that atheists can't account for morality. So what's the argument for that?
You can't get an ought from an is the argument. Back to Hume.
It looks like you don't know what an argument is. Come on, listen. Try to go from one line of reasoning to another. Do you know what an argument
You
is?
cannot get an
Coward?
ought from an it.
Coward. Dude, this guy is in hell right now, bro. Dude, this guy feels like his whole entire humanity is being completely destroyed. Dude, this is so funny. Okay. Alright, let's get back to the actual argument in question. So, this guy has all these books in the background, talking about Danny, the guy on the left. There's all these books in the background, and he's questioning is-ought. Like, dude, you know what is-ought is. Either that or you're a fraud. Okay? Now, to explain this more, again, he's asking for, like, positivism or making a counter-argument. The thing is, the counter-argument is towards a general idea of atheism, not necessarily his flavor of atheism. So we would, like, it would be more appropriate if he explained his position on it, and then we explain how is-ought specifically applies to him. Right? Because now we're like, because like when he asks in that manner, we're kind of forced to attack a straw man because he hasn't made his position very clear. Now, in any case, is-ought is pointing out that you cannot get the ought, the ethical, moral obligation to do anything from a mere state of affairs. So an example of state of affairs would be that, well, murder feels wrong and people feel like murder is wrong. It's like, okay, those are is statements. Those are statements of affair. Now, in order to get an ought, an ethical imperative, right? There's no ethical imperative that you can get inherently from that statement. In order to get it, you would have to add in a premise. Okay? That's the whole point of is-ought. An is doesn't inherently give you any oughts. And the whole point is that atheism is a worldview full of oughts. Full of ises. Right? So the question is-ought's trying to propose, primarily, aside from demonstrating that the ought can't directly come from the is also, okay, given that first part, where does your ought come from? What is that extra premise that gives any descriptive statement any type of ethical grounding? Because, like, descriptive statement affairs are in the field of metaphysics and ontology. That's not inherently ethics. And he should know this. Like, this is very basic stuff when you study philosophy. And he's supposed to be like this philosophy guy, right? With all these books. But doesn't really seem to understand this part. So yeah, this will be interesting. And we would also say that that extra premise the atheists will make will always be fallacious, basically. Now, for each individual atheist, we'll need to deal with their position and hear what they would say. But speaking in general, right, what they say will always be fallacious.
As you're an atheist
That's
in a
just
materialistic
but what does that
worldview,
have to
there's
do
no
with
ought.
atheism? What does that have to do with
In a
atheism?
Because we're saying that atheism is a worldview full of ises. Now, if he wants to try and have some kind of position that's not materialistic, he'll have to explain that. But again, that's why you're supposed to outline the position, right, when is-ought comes up, right? You're not supposed to just ask them, well, how? How does that apply to me? Because we have to make assumptions about a worldview that you haven't told us yet. So he's being either dumb or he's being very tricky.
Materialistic, atheistic worldview, there are no oughts.
First of all, I'm not a materialist.
You don't know the basic problem
and that's
of
just
ought
another
from
claim. That's just another
Not a
claim.
claim, it's an
Insult
argument.
claim?
It's a famous historical.
Look,
You don't know
you're
the
just
difference
a
between a
coward.
claim
You
and an
made a
argument.
claim. You can't defend it.
It's an argument. It goes back to David Hume.
He
Well,
tells
it's
what
a-
an
you don't know-
argument
you
is.
didn't even know that.
Right?
You don't know the
Look,
difference
everyone,
between.
Look what just happened. Look what just happened. This guy said.
Just what just
atheism
happened
is-
is
This guy said. He has very, like, campy, like, movements and, like, that's why he's so expressive, actually. Because they tend to be more expressive.
that you didn't know the difference between an argument and a
Why are you
claim.
ever talking to me? Why are you scared? Let me talk, right? You just claimed that atheists don't have a foundation of morality. I asked you to defend it, and then you said you can't get an ought from an is. What the heck?
That's the argument. That's
what are you going to
correct.
get from
It's
that
called an
premise,
argument.
right?
Because morality is an ought. Moralities are ought claims, and atheism is full of is claims. Now, if you want to argue, because he says he's not materialist, okay, well, we have to talk about that. Is-ought is a criticism of a worldview. We don't understand your specific individual worldview. We can't really make a critique of it because you haven't outlined your position. Right? So, yeah, this is stupid.
You can't derive
It's an
that
argument.
from-
It's not a premise. It goes back to David Hume. You just didn't know that.
Okay, can we get look? I think,
Wasn't
we're
there-
guys, I think
I'm
we're
sorry
moving
to
slightly
interrupt.
off topic. Let's bring it back to Pride Month. I want to play something which has had a lot of people talking on social media. This is Sesame Street, where all the puppets are holding hands, making up the Pride flag, and they say, "On our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world where."
Remember when Sesame Street in the no one remembers. Okay, why am I saying remember when? But no, remember. I remember, and actually I don't even remember because I wasn't alive in the 70s. Okay, I remember watching Sesame Street videos from the 70s. Pretty unique, right? I remember watching them, and they would talk about church. Like church would come up. We go to church on Sunday, and now we got this.
Every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy Pride Month. I guess I would say, Parker, again, the problem with this is it's this kind of enforced virtue signaling. It reminds me in a way, for very different reasons, the day in the George Floyd fallout when everyone had to do a black square on their Instagram or somehow they were racist. And I refused and everyone called me a racist. I went, why does putting a black square on my Instagram make any difference to anything? Again, with this, if you don't go along with the Pride Month stuff, then somehow you must be homophobic, is the kind of way this all seems to work. And I don't like that. I don't understand why we have to have any more of these enforced things where everywhere you go for a whole month, everything's Pride. Why? Why can't everyone just get on with their lives? Studies show that strength training.
Like, a way that I would respond to this is by saying that because of the bigotry and dehumanization that exists in our society, it's important to have these things for acceptance to decrease the level of bullying that exists in our society targeted towards the LGBTQ plus community. Now, no one's saying that you have to go to Pride, Piers. No one's saying that you have to involve yourself with Pride. When I go outside, I live in Los Angeles, I don't see rainbow flags everywhere. So I'm confused what you're talking
In
about.
Los
You walk down the
Angeles,
street and just,
you must be
Yeah.
joking, but you can barely move in Los
I live in Los
Angeles.
Angeles.
I've got a house in Beverly Hills. You might as well put a pride flag over the whole place.
I'm sorry, I've been to those areas. Pride flags aren't everywhere. And when you live in Beverly Hills, right, that's specifically like not even right next to downtown. So that's where most of the rainbow flags would be if you've actually been to LA recently.
Here's my serious point to you. If you actually want to do something constructive, for say the trans community, for example, wandering around with LGBTQ plus, and no one can ever remember now how many letters and digits there are on these.
You just said it.
It gets but it gets bigger and bigger. And I've seen one with 2 in it and all sorts of stuff, a 2 spirit, whatever. It's all.
All it is IA plus.
I know, but then
That's
there's
it.
2 and everything. It gets ridiculous, right? And this is the problem with these things. It's never ending. It's like there were 2 genders, then there were 10, then there were 80, then there were 100. All of it's nonsense to me. However,
wasn't like this, then that,
if you
but-
want to think that it's a free world, here's my point. If you actually want to make a constructive difference to, say, the trans community and trans rights and protect trans people, then the absolute worst way to go about that is the way that the trans lobby has tried to do it, by eroding women's rights in things like women's sport. That has exposed so many trans people to mockery, abuse, and the rest of it. And
Dude, like, who cares, bro? I just don't see any, like, I guess, like, normies like this stuff. Like, normies like talking about this. Like, oh, females and men and women sports. Like, dude, it's 2025. We get it. Men and women sports is wrong. It's dumb. Okay? Like,
I would say that rather than spending all this time and effort and money on flags in Pride Month, what about just actually getting...
and the reason why it's so frustrating is because that's not the point. The point of Pride is not about expressing oneself. Okay? Pride, the whole assumption is based on the sin of pride. And it's more than just being like, oh, arrogant. It's having an image of God that is other than the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And in this case, their image of pride is themselves. Their image of God is themselves, which is pride, which is the deadliest sin, because pride precedes any other sin, right? So, like, that's what pride is, okay? Pride isn't people expressing, like, just, oh, I'm just expressing myself when I'm wearing a BDSM outfit. Like, it's people who have who need help. It's people who need help just out and about expressing the contents of their mind, which has been traumatized and repressed to a certain point. I actually feel bad for them. Like, they actually do need like genuine help. I'm not even saying that to be rude, make a joke. Like, they actually like need people to help them. And then, they make out pride to be this other thing, and they're arguing on that premise. Like, pride's actually about this stuff. It's not. Okay, that's why this is annoying to watch.
Getting people together to understand that eroding women's rights is the worst possible thing to promote trans rights. Would you accept that?
Okay, so then if we were going to be talking about eroding women's rights, we'd have to talk about people that, someone like Andrew Wilson supports, like Donald Trump, who was held civilly liable of sexually abusing women, who bragged about
Well, hang on, let's stick to my question. Don't bring Trump into it.
I promise you I'm making a point relative to this.
All right.
He bragged
Smoky
about
man
walking
bad. Smoky man bad. Smoky man bad.
You're very childish. He bragged about walking
All you
into the changing
can
rooms.
do is focus on me. You can't even answer to his question, dude. It's just.
I'm
but
promising
Andrew
I'm
Wilson
answering right now.
bad.
You're cutting me off.
But Smoky man bad.
You're cutting me off. I'm trying to answer it right now. Respectfully, I'm trying to answer it right now, but you're not allowing me to.
Okay, well, answer without distracting into Trump and stuff. Just answer the question.
Well, I'm giving an explanation, right? So he bragged about walking into the changing rooms of girls in Miss TNSA because he quote unquote owns the place to inspect them.
Right,
Without
forget Trump. Forget Trump.
I promise you, I'm making a point here. Would you like?
You have to get to the point a bit quicker. Come on.
I promise you I am. I've had 15 seconds. Okay, so specifically, right, people like Andrew Wilson do not call that type of stuff out when it's explicitly harmful towards women's rights.
You're playing whataboutery. I'm not interested in whataboutery.
Go Piers. Because, yeah, that is what he's just like, whataboutism. Yeah, that's what it is. Like, who cares, dude? Okay, you want to score your brownie points on TikTok, like...
Because I haven't done that. So, as somebody like me, talk to me, Parker, talk to me, right? As somebody who has always supported...
I was going to refer to trans
as someone
people,
who's always supported trans
Piers.
rights, trans
This is
people's
incredibly
rights
disingenuous.
to... Well, I have always supported trans people's rights to fairness, equality, and safety. Right to the point that it began to erode into women's rights.
You interrupted my TikTok clip, man.
It's to the same thing. And that's my point to you. Why waste all this time, effort, and money on virtue signaling for Pride Month when in fact there's a real problem going on which remains unresolved because too many people on the left and too many young people go along with this absolute farce of trans athletes in women's sport, which exposes trans people around the world to extra mockery and abuse.
But you'll condemn the mockery and abuse from people like Jay Dyer, and these are the mockers. You condemn that.
I'm saying you're going to get the mockery when there is something so obviously grotesquely unfair.
Jay Dyer's so mean. I'm with my wife and I saw Hugh Jackman on my Instagram feed. Oh my god, I felt like cheating. That's still such a crazy premise. You can be married to a woman and then you just see a guy on your Instagram feed and you're just like...
Can I respond?
Parker, you got your hand up very politely, so answer me. Without mentioning Donald Trump or Andrew Wilson.
Yeah, okay. So I can't mention the person on the panel, but specifically in terms of trans people are not specifically going to be harmful towards women in these particular spaces, given that they've met the conditions of multiple years of HRT.
Have you been okay, sorry, hang on.
Please, let me finish.
Parker, you can't make it. Parker, literally.
Piers, I'm usually against Piers and his all constant interrupting, but this is what Parker does. Parker does this all the time. So, yeah, it's just good.
As you've said this, today it's been revealed.
I'm finishing, Piers.
Today,
Piers, I'm trying to
wait
explain.
a minute.
I'm trying to explain, Piers.
And by the way, if you just, okay, what if we were to just, I'll humor this to make things interesting. Okay, so I actually say something aside from just saying this is stupid. Okay, I'll humor this. What if, we just look at the fact that, if two athletes are in a sport, okay, and one takes HRT or TRT or whatever, that's an unfair advantage, right? Okay, well, what you have is, in women's sports, you basically have people who have a natural HRT or TRT dose ingrained biologically in their body, as if a woman took it, okay, because they're taking estrogen, so kind of, I'm not going to get into a bunch of biological things, but basically, men compared to women have a TRT dose, okay? HRT, TRT dose, a huge one. Then take estrogen, makes it a smaller one. So in the same way, I can't believe I'm making this point because it's just so obvious, but I'm just humoring it. In the same way, a dude taking steroids as a male athlete is wrong, Same thing with these other ones. In order to like transition, you have to do this.
You talked about safety.
This is disingenuous.
Literally today, the Algerian gold medal winner in the Paris
haven't been able to
Olympics
speak.
women's boxing has been
Piers, can I
revealed
speak?
to be a man who should never have been competing.
Piers, can I speak?
That's
Piers, can I
why-
You
speak?
know how people feel when they're on your panels and you mute
Can
them,
I speak
Parker?
without interruption, please?
All right, answer.
I've been incredibly nice on this panel. I would love to be able to speak without interruption. Is that okay, Piers?
Yes, but answer my question.
Yeah, I was trying to answer the question. You cut me off. So specifically, I don't think trans people in these spaces would be harmful after multiple years with HRT and or not going through a male puberty, as I've seen no good evidence from any scientific studies that indicate that there would be an unfair biological advantage
Imam
at that
Khalif,
point.
what are you talking
listen,
about, man?
listen, I'm still explaining.
Parker, you're
Listen, I'm
talking
not-
complete gibberish,
Can
man.
I please finish?
Imam Khalif has literally just been exposed as a biological male who won Olympic gold in women's boxing and beat up an Italian boxer woman so badly she quit in 43 seconds and said she thought she was going to die in the ring. So the whole argument you just put forward is literally disproved by a news story today. That's the point I was making to you. Of
Piers,
course
have
it's
they got-
dangerous
Piers,
when you allow
Piers, have they-
biological men to get in a boxing ring and beat.
And it's so funny because now Piers seems like this super smart guy. Like, oh my god, Piers, you're destroying Parker. Wow. But it's like, oh, you're destroying Parker. Like, okay, you're beating up a kid in a wheelchair. But no, this is just funny because this is what Parker does this all the time on his panel, so it's great.
Up women, it is dangerous.
Piers, has that person been through multiple years of HRT?
I don't know. I don't care.
Then they haven't
That
met my set
person
of
is a
criteria.
man.
So how is that a critique of my worldview if they haven't met the set of criteria that I mentioned? Can I please finish? Can I please mention? Can I please mention? Right. So again, let me please finish. Right. I am saying what if they meet this set of criteria, then they can play, and there's nothing unfair biologically
Yes, there
speaking that you
is,
can
though.
identify.
This is where you're so
scientifically
deluded.
speaking.
You're
No,
so
no, this is
deluded
just you-
because
no,
even
no,
if you
no,
have
Piers,
all the
Piers,
if you
Piers,
have
let me
all the
respond.
treatment,
Let me respond,
you still
Piers.
retain
You
the
have not
body
allowed
mass,
This is
the
incredibly
muscle
disingenuous.
mass, the lung capacity. You retain all the biological advantages of being
Yeah, and that's like common sense. Like if you take a dude and you just punch a bunch of estrogen in his body, it's not like his bones are gonna get weaker, but it's not gonna get to the level of like how a woman would be who's just gone through a normal life, even a life of like exercise, right? Like if I took a bunch of estrogen, like I would still be like way stronger than women, right? Like an average lady, right? So it doesn't work.
Not after
a
multiple
man.
years of HRT. Not
Yes,
after
you
multiple
do.
years of HRT.
Yes, you
Wait, do you want
do.
to bet, Piers? Piers, put money on it. You said you retain every biological advantage.
Muscle
given that you have
mass,
gone through multiple years
lung
of HRT.
capacity.
You don't think muscle mass
You want to
and
bet
lung
your
capacity goes
entire
down?
savings of your entire life
Let's
that
bet
I'm right and you're wrong?
Piers, let's bet $1,000 right now that there are lower biological advantages that would specifically exist given that someone goes through multiple years of HRT, right, relative to estrogen.
No, you're missing my point.
Bet
which
that.
is,
Take that bet.
No, you're
Take that
missing
bet.
you're missing my point.
Are you going to accept the bet? Yes or no?
You can have
yes or no?
all the HRT treatment you
$1,000,
like.
Piers.
You can have all the
$1,000.
testosterone. But
He's
hang
not
on.
gonna accept it.
Let
He
me
won't do
answer.
it.
Let me answer.
Crashing
I'll tell
out.
you the bet I'll make. If you want to bet the
change
$1,000,
it.
if you want to bet the $1,000 that if you go through testosterone reduction treatment and the rest of it, that you come out of it with a reduced muscle mass or lung capacity or the other things that give men an advantage, take that bet for me.
Yeah. So I will bet after multiple years of HRT, specifically relating to estrogen, right, there is a reduction in muscle mass. You want to take that bet, Piers?
There's a reduction, but it's still way higher than a woman's baseline. That's the point. Like, he's pandering, dude. There's no way he's that dumb.
It's bullshit. Andrew Wilson.
Okay, let's take that bet. Do you
Andrew
want to take it,
Wilson.
yes or no?
Andrew Wilson.
Yes or no? Do you want to take the bet?
I'm letting Andrew respond to you.
Yeah. So when you're talking specifically about this whole LGBTQ thing has backfired greatly, and it's because this whole thing
Personally offended.
is astroturfed. It's literally astroturfed. You just showed us how. I mean, you have a massive corporation putting out propaganda for a children's TV show, showing a bunch of hands in a rainbow, this and that. It's very clear that this is backfiring. And by the way, the trans movement set the gay rights movement back 20 years or more. You can't convince us, Parker, even if you're attracted to men who you call women, that the rest of us need to call them women or men. Like they either are or they aren't.
Is this not changing the topic?
You have been trying to convince people forever that there's no way to distinguish these things. It's like, look,
I mean, most of the time you can, first of all. And second of all, yeah, they can't have babies. You know, like, if someone were to have the misfortune of getting tricked or getting fooled, somehow getting married without knowing, and they wanted kids, I mean, they'd be pretty screwed, wouldn't they? So yeah, there is a big difference. Even, like, aside from the fact that they also, at least 99.9% of the time, look very different.
the average normal person, they can tell that these guys who go out and go, "Hey, how you doing? My name is Chuck," with long hair are clearly not women, Parker. Like, we know this. And so what happens is you guys gaslight everybody and try to pretend that, hey, you just can't really know. It's too vague. It's, we can't really get to the meat and potatoes here. It's like, we do know, Parker. And you have not been able to successfully, with your TikTok brain, convince people that men can be women and women can be men. You haven't done that. And that's one of the reasons that you see Pride falling behind, is because of all of this gaslighting. People are rejecting it.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans,
Claim from the original claim about Pride. I do want to address the claim specifically about Pride and how we're addressing, like, how people are negatively impacted. And as a society, we want to address this in terms of this so that we can reduce the likelihood of people being harmed or negatively impacted or not accepted in these communities. That's the point of Pride in these conditions, right? Just because it is the case that issues have existed to a greater extent in the past doesn't mean that we don't have an issue to address today, right? In terms of Pride, right? Like, addressing that we should have acceptance of gay people. We should have acceptance of people in the LGBTQ plus community. So
Yeah,
That's just
listen,
isn't it
I-
counterintuitive, though, Parker, to
Piers, I'd like to
say,
add one
like,
thing. I would like to add one thing.
clearly it's backfiring. Like, it seems like it's counterintuitive. If you push the
Well, there's a
propaganda
mistake that
that
you're
hard,
making.
I think it's backfiring.
Yeah, it's
I wanna
backfiring.
highlight
Let me
one
bring
thing.
in Danny.
Where's your
I wanna highlight
pride
that.
let me bring
Where
in
is it?
Danny. Let Danny have a say.
Yeah, right. I want to highlight that what the corporations do, right? I might agree with you. Some of them sell out for Pride, right? They, it's marketable. I might agree with you, but Pride is way more than just what the corporations do. It's how people, identify with their sexuality.
Dude, the point is more than the corporations, more than just the corporations. But the point is being funded by these type of people. That's the point. Right? So, yeah, it's funding because this is like the whole game with like liberal, like stuff. The one problem with conservatism, at least at its base form, is that it creates repression because humans naturally have depraved thoughts and depraved feelings. Liberalism basically says, okay, you get to release all of them. And the thing is, releasing these type of thoughts and feelings feels therapeutic. It feels like you're accepting yourself, which is the whole point of Pride, right? Conservatism says, well, those things are wrong, which they are. But the problem is that most conservatives don't have any type of doctrine, so to speak, of releasing repression. Although Catholics have like confession, Orthodox also have confession, Lutherans also do. But even then, they don't understand how confession relates to repression in the mind. They don't understand how repression works. And liberalism basically banks entirely off of repression. So, yeah, it's just people expressing themselves. No, it's people expressing trauma and whatnot in destructive ways. And corporations and bankers and etc. are funding the expression. It's not about companies selling out for Pride necessarily. It's kind of a different argument.
And kind of anti-bullying agenda that's very important and central to Pride. Whatever the corporations do, if they sell out, they sell out, but you can still have Pride whatever they do.
Yeah, you can have Pride,
Well,
but why
hang
do you
on,
have to have?
Danny, though,
Why do you have all the
like,
commercialization behind it?
It's not organic, Danny. This is not
Anti-bullying is inherently
organically. This is not organically people coming together anymore to force this. This is a bunch of NGOs.
Andrew, if you were actually Christian, you would be in
in
support of Pride. If you were actually Christian, you'd be in support of Pride because you'd be
What?
okay
Oh,
with
yeah?
accepting people.
Is there a cardinal
right?
sin
Yeah,
called-
that's what.
If you're actually Christian, you support Pride. Or would I support the month that is literally celebrating the deadliest of the 7 deadly sins? Like, really?
Pride?
said.
Is there a cardinal sin called
Wait,
pride?
it's not
Parker?
pride in a literal sense. It's pride specifically in the
Yeah,
sense
you
of
know,
That's actually a very good point. Pride is a sin.
Sense pride.
Why are you celebrating sin?
It's not.
Yeah,
pride
you're
in a literal
celebrating
sense.
Pride in
sin.
the sense
Literally,
that
what are you
we're
talking
You're
about?
misunderstanding. You're misunderstanding. It's not pride in a literal sense. It's pride in the sense specifically where we're accepting people specifically for being gay, right? For
Yeah, it's accepting themselves, putting their own personal moral thoughts over God, which is pride. So yes, it is the literal form of pride. Yes, it is.
being
Well, that's
trans,
not
and that's
Christian.
Because
exactly
they're
what
proud of
Christianity
it.
is.
Wait,
Christianity
Because
doesn't
they're
tell you to do that.
proud of it, right?
Christianity tells you to
Because they're
love
private.
everyone and
Yeah,
tells
yeah,
you
this is not about love, dude. Like, they always make this argument. It's like, dude, you're so like, it's not what we're talking about, bro.
to
It
accept
doesn't
people who are
only
human
say
beings
that.
made
It
in the image
also
of
talks
God.
about
Gay
boundaries
people-
and limitations. You
But
have to
gay
have a
people and trans
basis
people-
for virtue versus vice. Christianity is a virtue vice ethic, and your whole ethos is to defend your own personal vices because your ethics are all purely subjective. You have
you
no
proud to be a
basis for
Christian,
rights
Jay?
other
Are you proud to
than
be a
what you
Christian?
say is the case.
Are you,
Jay, are you proud to be a Christian?
are you proud to be Christian? So yeah, again, this is the this is the game they're playing. Like, are you proud to be Christian? Oh, you believe in pride. And the whole point is, pride is a deadly sin, as in pride, as in putting other things above God. So yeah, we're proud to be Christian because that's putting God first. That's the whole point. So they're playing this dumb dialectic game here to farm TikTok.
Sure.
Oh, that's a sin.
That's an
Pride.
equivocation.
Oh,
I didn't make
get
the
'em.
argument. I didn't make the
I mean, look,
argument. That's an equivocation.
We're not talking about the cardinal
What's
sin.
an
We're talking about
equivocation
the
fallacy?
pride. We're talking about the sense of pride that matters, to your identity, who you are, Christian.
Yeah, yeah, and the point is that that sense of identity is putting yourself above God, which is pride. Like the TikTok, like I think they're just dumb. They're dumb, or they're like, they're either dumb or they're like plants. I don't know. It's hard to tell sometimes. 'Cause, I mean, people are pretty stupid nowadays, but this is just such a dumb argument.
Said virtue
Jay,
vice
Craig.
ethic, and you use an argument from equivocation. It's two different uses of
No,
the
no,
word.
you're equivocating.
that's what
You
Piers
brought up
was
the
doing.
cardinal sin.
No. Yes, you are. I didn't say that pride is
Jay,
the
Jay,
sin
Jay,
that is
respectfully, wasn't that exactly what you guys were doing when I said that pride
No.
wasn't used in a
No, okay, yeah, you're saying there's a distinction between pride and the cardinal sin of pride, and we're saying there's actually not a distinction in this case. It's not rocket science.
literal sense, but then you guys equivocated and said that we were
I didn't make that argument. Andrew made that argument. I said you don't
So
have
Andrew
a
made a
basis
mistake.
for virtue
So
or
Andrew made a
vice.
mistake.
Oh, here we go. So Andrew made a mistake.
So Andrew made a mistake.
I
Mistake,
said you don't
right?
have a basis for virtue or
No,
vice.
we were basing this around the idea that Parker said. What Parker said specifically here was, well, wait a second. If you're a Christian, you should be all about this. And it's like, no, not really. And you haven't really demonstrated how. Why, Parker? Why is it that we need to support homosexuality as Christians, Parker? Tell us why.
Well, I was saying that you should be loving of thy neighbor as you're referencing specifically
Yeah,
people,
that has nothing
right?
to do
Human
with this,
beings,
bro, like-
right? If you're referencing
Love
Why
people,
does that
human
mean we
beings,
have to
That's having
support
boundaries.
homosexuality? Why do we have to support homosexuality?
I'm saying that you have to be accepting of people who are homosexual.
Why
Because
do
Yeah,
we
yeah,
need-
yeah. They have a human nature. We accept they have a human nature. We accept that human natures come with it rights that we must not impugn on. Like, for example, not just killing them. Like, this is like, duh. Okay, do you believe you should be allowed to kill gay people? Because it seems like that's what you're saying. Because the Bible actually says that you have to be loving. So dumb. Like, duh. Yes, they have a human nature. We accept their human nature as that, but we say that they have fallen into an unfortunate situation, need help. So we're not gonna support the problem. I mean, this can be analogized to any other situation where someone's doing harm to themselves.
to support homosexuality, Parker?
Okay, we're not saying you need to support like engaging in gay intercourse. We're saying that you need to support people who are gay as they are people created in the
Why?
image of God.
Why do we need to support them? Why do we
People
need to
created in the
support
image of
them
God.
in things that we consider sinful? You want us to support sin?
Wait, I'm not saying that
wait,
you
by
should
support, he just
necessarily
means-
support sin. I'm saying you're supporting the person who engages in sin the same way you're a sinner, and that you engage in sin, yet you should be
yeah.
supported.
So when homosexuals come to the church and they reject homosexuality, they're no longer acting in that way. They are accepted.
they're
in
not
the church.
rejected.
What are you
they're not
talking about?
rejected. Wait, by
It's
the way,
an
nothing
action.
the
It's
Bible
not an
says that
identity.
being
So there's a
being gay-
vice virtue
exactly.
ethic that they're not understanding. It's not an identity. It's a vice.
Wait,
Well,
hold on, so
well,
being-
I want to bring this.
I think it's a reflection of a unfound identity. Because the way I see it is that the ego, the identity, will answer to the higher self, which is created by the image of God. And these people have a malformed identity and a malformed image of God, therefore a malformed higher self. So then, therefore, they engage in these type of things and they put pride into it. They put it above the true God, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So it has to, I think it has to do a lot with identity. I wouldn't say it's... I wouldn't separate it like that because it's an identity problem for sure. Because, I mean, that's the reason why they do it as well, because, it makes them feel special as well. Like, Like, for example, I think I talked about this in another video, but like some of the people I work with go to school, right? Like high school. And apparently, like, there's a bunch of people who are part of the LGBT movement in high school, which I always thought was a bit weird because, you know, when I went to school, I mean, that's when I went to school in 6th grade, so I guess, you know, what kids are going to be that way. But even then, even other people I talked to that went to high school a little bit before me, that wasn't really a thing. Now it is. And then he also tells me how these girls like switch up. Like one day they're not, and one day they are. It's because they want to feel special. So it is about identity, I think.
So I want to bring the pride bit to an end. We're going to move on to the
intercourse.
last topic. All I would say is that I absolutely do not think homosexuality is a sin. I completely respect everyone's
Catholic.
right to have any sexuality they like. I just don't see the point in spending a whole month allowing companies to virtue signal their way into making tons of money out of it. I just think it's the
How long then? Do you want a
grasping commercialization of sexuality
wait,
that
you
I
just
find
read the
so
Is
objectionable.
your issue just how long? You just want a week or a day? Like, what do you? Is that the
If you
issue?
want to have a pride day, fine. But why a month? Goes on
Wait,
and
Does it
on
matter
and
if it's a
on.
month or a day?
Huh?
Wait, couldn't
What does it matter if it's a month
corporations?
or a day?
But you
Well,
get,
are we gonna have
if it's a day, it's a
necrophilia
day
month?
longer
Do we
than I
have
get as a
necrophilia
straight
month?
guy. I mean, what about me? Where am I?
Wait,
Where's my day?
Are you bullied for being straight?
We don't have the same issue.
Wait,
I get bullied all the
Piers.
time. I've been bullied on social
Not for
media
being
all
straight.
day.
Not for being straight. No.
Return to
All
the
right, let's
R
move
word
on.
debate. Are they going to
I
debate
want
about
to play a clip
retard?
from Joe Rogan. I'm going to start
no.
with you, Jay, on this. This is Joe Rogan talking about the R word.
The R word?
It's one of these retarded
Retard.
shows where they're screaming. There's the word again. We brought it. We were just talking about
You
that.
did it early.
The word retarded is back. And it's one of the great culture victories that I think
It
is spurred on probably by podcasts.
Now, Jay, is it a great
Okay, well, W. Joe Rogan, I guess. I mean, I wasn't expecting much, but okay, W. Joe Rogan.
moment, a great cultural victory that the R word is back, which obviously is short for it's retarded, it's mentally retarded, it's for people who are mentally impaired. It was used in a derogatory way against people who are mentally impaired. Why would that be a cultural victory to bring that back?
Well, I'm a big fan of the R word because I myself act retarded all the time and I'm proud of it. In fact, I would actually probably get retarded tattooed across my back because I think it is a cultural victory. I love
Actually, hold on. Let me look at something.
it because
That back.
He looks genuinely, like, despaired over someone saying retard.
well, I'm a big fan of the R word because I myself act retarded all the time and I'm proud of it. In fact, I would actually probably get retarded tattooed across my back because I think it is a
Dude, okay. Now Parker's being the super expressive one. See how Danny doesn't care? Now they're not talking about gay people anymore. Danny doesn't care anymore. But now when we're talking about retards, now Parker cares. See, that's interesting. But yeah, now we should just like clip out Parker and just play that. It's so funny. Bro, he looked like a kid who just saw his dog. He looks like a kid who just saw his. He looks like a kid who just saw his dog get ran over. Oh, this is good. This is good.
cultural victory. I'd love to be
That's
able
very
to say
fitting.
what's on
Right.
my mind. I think, yeah, I mean, well, these guys are retarded as an example. So we have panelists that are retarded. So yeah, I love the R word. I'm rated R totally. And I think that it's a freeing thing. It's a way to express the way we express things in the 80s and the 90s without problem. Like, you can go watch Bill Murray comedy movies and they're great because
Yeah, but people
have
used
the
to, yeah, but
freedom
hang on,
speak.
people used to use the N word, 30, 40 years ago, right? But then
Yeah, and I
that was,
champion all the comedians
but that
still use
became
the N.
something that was taboo in society because it was deemed to be very.
Oh my god. Look at this.
Champion all the comedians
But that
still use
became
the N.
something that was taboo in society
It
because
has to be unnatural. I've always had a suspicion that Parker's like a plant. Like he gets paid off to act a certain way, to push a social agenda, and does someone actually act like that when someone says that? Is that a thing some people do? 'Cause I don't know. Maybe I'm out of touch with those type of people, but it seems kind of weird.
it was deemed to be very offensive to black people. The R
Yeah,
word,
but I don't think it
the
is.
use of the R
So,
word is deemed
not
to be
wrong.
very offensive to people who are genuinely mentally impaired.
Dude, I'm gonna screenshot that. That's probably gonna make for a good thumbnail. Okay, let me okay. Save that, put that over there. That's gonna be good.
And they don't like
He's
it.
making a soy face, like he's like freaking out over there.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I'm sorry. You just said it's
but
justified
there's a
for
difference
white people
between
to say the
taboo
N-word.
and what's wrong, morally wrong. I don't
Interesting.
equate the two.
All right,
Taboos are not
Parker,
equated.
your
to
response.
wrong.
So here's my question. Do you think that Jesus would say the N-word, and do you think Jesus would say the R slur?
Well, I mean, he basically used the Greek equivalent of the F slur, malaka. And I just Google what malaka means in ancient Greek. That's basically equivalent of the F slur. And I mean, I'm not saying it not because I don't say. I mean, if you know me, you know it's one of my favorite words. But you know, it's because of YouTube, right? You know, I use that in my Discord all the time, my sidely post. Join the Discord, by the way. You get to, if you want to debate me or ask me questions, you know, feel free. But yeah. Kind of a non sequitur. He used the F slur, so whether or not Jesus specifically would say a word doesn't necessarily mean that we can or can't say a word. Would he? I mean, I can't be totally sure about that. But it's not like this knockdown, like, oh, he would never say that. It's not really like that.
Jesus does say jokes and slurs in the Gospels. Yes, he talks
Does he
about.
So
Ooh, whoa, Jay actually knows about that? Okay. Yeah, most people don't actually know that Jesus, for example, said F slur. He said multiple, so I would actually be curious to see the other ones. I would actually love to see that, but
Jesus
He
would say
talks
the R
about
slur in
the
the N-word.
equivalents in his day.
So
Yeah, he
Jesus
calls
would
people
say the
dogs.
N-word and the R slur.
He
That's
calls
not the
people
same thing as
dogs
the N-word and the
in
R slur.
reference to you guys' vice.
Parker, do people in your friendship group ever use the R word?
No, never.
yep, Dean Withers does not say the R word. Yeah, he probably doesn't.
It's just a taboo word.
Yes, I think it's incredibly wrong to use. You shouldn't use it.
People in
And
your
honestly,
friend
the
group,
fact-
So wrong.
the N-word.
Can I
But,
please?
but
Can I please
out of
respond?
interest, Parker, what is your rationale personally for not using it?
I think it's incredibly harmful. In the same way that we don't use other sorts of slurs because they're harmful,
Okay.
I think that we
If your
shouldn't use this word
arguments
because it's harmful.
Hurt my feelings. Should you not argue?
So no, specifically, we're saying it meets a threshold of harm, right?
Whose
because
threshold?
the R slur and the
Whose threshold
my
is arbitrary?
threshold,
Threshold of harm. Where do you get that from?
my
Your
threshold.
So it's
is arbitrary.
subjective. That's a subjective
we're
argument.
ta-
Thank
we're
you. So
ta-
it's
we're
only
ta-
your
we're
personal
ta-
subjective
Wait,
taste.
we're obviously we're
If
talking
it's your
about under
personal
my-
subjective
Can I
taste,
please
then it can
finish? Can I
also
please
be
finish?
mine.
Okay,
So
well
that's
then,
why
Parker,
this
it
is
doesn't
exactly
reach our
finished. Bad
threshold,
argument.
Parker.
All right,
It
Andrew.
doesn't reach our
That's fine. That
threshold,
would be.
Parker.
I understand, Andrew. That would be your perspective on the matter, but given my perspective, I would say that meets my.
Okay, bro. Okay, so he's basically saying, well, I like chocolate ice cream, and you like mint. Well, that's actually a pretty bad comparison. I like cookie dough ice cream, and you like cookies and cream ice cream. That's
My threshold. Are you saying it's okay to use the N-word,
And
Andrew?
it's subjective, and it doesn't work as an argument.
Wait,
Andrew,
why
is it
do you
okay
think
to-
people like-
Andrew,
wait,
Andrew,
ask-
Andrew,
ask-
hold
why
on,
do
hold
you
on.
think-
Yeah. Parker. Is it ever okay to use the word retard?
No. Is it okay for you to use the N-word?
Is it even okay to use the word retard to reference the word retard?
I think it's wrong to use it in general. Can you please use?
Can you answer my
tell me-
question,
my
and then I'll
question?
answer yours, I promise.
I said it's
Is
wrong.
it okay
I said
to
it's wrong.
refer to the word
No.
retard if you're explaining the word retard?
Say R slur.
So
Well-
you can't. Okay, so you can't even use. So just the word itself. Okay, so here's the thing that's so funny about this, right? Is like
Superstition.
ultimately when we say
Am I able
when
to
we
ask
say
a question
retard,
yet?
yeah, and like the thing is, there's no infallible like I don't personally swear. Like I'll say retard and like some other words like that, but I don't use like f bomb, shit, anything like that. I don't use those but that's for a personal reason. I'm not gonna say that you should or shouldn't, but like there's no infallible list of words that are right or wrong to say, right? So like I don't understand like the whole point of this, bro. Like. Now, it could be wrong to use a word in a way that you specifically intend to, like, use as a way to articulate your hate for someone, but that's because hate's wrong, not because a specific word isn't part of an infallible list of bad words you can't use.
retarded? Yeah. So I wouldn't use
That's
the
fucking
N-word. Here's
weird.
why. When I say that, if somebody says the N-word, what ends up ultimately happening, there's not really too much in the way of equivocation there. Retard is not actually referring to retarded people, though. Basically, ever. Nobody ever says it, Parker, to refer to somebody who's actually retarded.
That doesn't change it.
99%
Wait,
of the case
hold up.
use
If
of
you're
the
using
word-
N-word to refer to a white person, it's still wrong. Would you use the N-word to refer to a white person?
I mean, in some circumstances, I think that you can use it in a comedic sense. That's hilarious.
Like, who cares? Nigga.
Sure.
You think white people using the N-word is okay in any circumstance?
Yeah, comedic senses especially. I think it's fine.
That's disgusting as fuck. You do it.
Oh
do you
my
think it's okay to do it
God,
right
no.
now? Then
Well,
it's wrong.
according to my subjective personal threshold of harm, that's disgusting.
Argument?
Objective basis.
Is that
There's no
an
basis.
argument, Parker?
Wait, me calling something disgusting because I think it goes against my
Oh,
moral
you think it's
intuition?
disgusting?
What's
Okay,
the
right.
argument?
Homosexuality is
That's
disgusting because
Am I
it
able
goes
to
against
finish?
my
All
moral
right, let me bring in Danny.
Can I respond?
Let me bring, hang on,
seriously
hang
didn't
on,
let me
hang on,
speak.
hang on. Let me bring in Danny. This is what NBC said. NBC News, when they covered the return of the R word, they said, while its use has percolated in the comedy world for years, only recently has the word and discussion of its return become more normalized. That is fueled in no small part by a sense that the tide has turned both culturally and politically against those seeking to keep the word out of the popular lexicon. But the battle lines are not as clear as one might think. And there's no doubt that's true. I mean, what is your view about this?
I mean, we got to remind ourselves why people like us are against use of the R word, and especially in public places, right?
Yeah.
It's because it was a term, I believe, a technical term for mentally disabled people, and we don't want to demean those people or accidentally offend people that have children or relatives or friends that are mentally disabled, right? And so it has that connotation, unlike the word dog. When Jesus uses the term dog, right? There's no such connotation, right? You'll have.
Are you dumb? Like, calling someone a dog. He also called people like children of Satan. You're saying that to a Jewish leader. You're a child of Satan. Like, that's way worse than calling them retarded. Like, come on. That's like the equivalent. That's like 10x the equivalent of calling a retarded kid retarded. Okay? And the same thing goes for dog. Like, a dog. It's not even how we see a dog today. We're like, oh, dog. This is my dog. You don't even say it in positive. Like, this is my dog. And you don't say, oh, this is my literal dog here. That's my best friend, Dog as in you're disgusting. Okay? You're a filthy dog. Okay? Kind of like how Hispanic moms feel about dogs. They just feel like they're nasty. Like, that's what he's saying. That's like the equivalent of the slur words. That's the point he's making.
Have to be reminded why it's considered to be a
No,
slur,
that's
right? I mean, it's like you forgot.
Yeah, but
This is
so is
made
like
up.
the word.
This is
So is the
made
word
up.
moron. So is the word moron. The word moron had a really negative societal connotation, and it still does. And people use it all the time, just in lieu of the word retard. They'll just say you're
Right,
a
but that's
moron
a-
instead of you're a retard.
the
It's like
R word is more
you're
recent.
hang on.
Matters.
You're begging. Hang on. You're picking
Arbitrary.
and choosing. Yeah, you're picking and choosing which thing to be selectively offended by. You're not. I don't. So like, let me ask you guys this honestly.
It's the
I want you guys to
distinction of
answer me fucking honestly. Does the word retard actually offend you?
Yes. I think it's fucked
You,
up for you to
Danny,
use. I've been
does it
very
actually
clear. It's
offend you,
fucked up.
Danny, when somebody says
Yes.
the word
Wait a minute.
retard?
Yeah, it does.
So
It
if
does,
Zach
especially in public
Galifianakis,
places and professional places.
so Zach
like this.
Galifianakis does some when he does comedy and he does a movie and he makes a joke and says retort. Is that also bad?
I'm confused the context of what you're referencing. Is he specifically trying to
No, wait a
refer to
minute.
the
Now,
R slur? If he is,
context
then
matters.
yes.
So now
Yeah,
the
he's
context
trying to
matters.
allude to the word retard.
I don't. Okay, then yes, that's wrong.
Yes, that's
Okay.
wrong.
I thought you were
it is
saying
like
like someone. I
Any
thought you were.
word that references
you-
another word now is wrong, like moron.
So specifically, in terms of the one I thought you were referencing, I thought you were referencing like someone responding to an argument. I thought it's the particular term that you
No,
were using.
Zach Galifianakis in a comedy movie saying retort
I
as a
understand.
joke instead of retard.
So if your
Yeah, and
friend
I think
says
that's
to
incredibly
Parker,
fucked up to use.
Okay, so now also any word that refers to
Okay,
the
this
word.
is a good argument, Jay Dyer. So basically, Parker is going to be in a position where he has to accept that any word that refers to anyone that to anyone that could use a word like retarded to explain this. So basically, any dumb person, he can't use the word dumb. He can use the word stupid, moron, etc.
Word retard is now wrong, like moron.
I think if you're intentionally specifically trying to use a word right in place specifically of the R slur, specifically as to create the same type of outcome as the R slur,
So any
and I do
word
think
that could
in
refer to that word
particular
is not wrong.
intention, I think that particular intention would.
So you can't
definitely
say
be
the word
wrong.
moron. So now you
Right,
can't
you can't say the word moron.
You don't necessarily have that intention. It doesn't meet the
So
particular
this is
threshold
you're
of harm as
just
well.
spiraling into insanity because
That's not.
it's
That's not.
truly
I gave two
subjective.
conditions to separate it. I gave two conditions.
Who's-
Wait, it being
your
subjective is not a
conditions are
critique.
arbitrary.
Wait,
They're
wait, wait,
made
wait.
up.
Wait, it being
They're
subjective is not a critique. That's not a critique against
Yes,
the
it
view.
is. Yes, it
No,
is.
it's not. How is that a critique?
Yes, it is. If something's purely subjective, then I can come with all the same claims with all the same force, and there's no way to resolve the two. That's why purely subjective arguments fail.
Wait, there not being a resolution, particularly between the moral disagreement of me and you, isn't a critique, particularly of my perspective.
Yeah, but it means you have no basis to respond to the critique of your perspective. So,
Then you can't say
Oh, yeah,
anything
yeah.
is morally wrong. There's no ought from an is.
Wait, I can say something is morally wrong under my perspective. You're misunderstanding subjective morality.
yeah, dude, but the point is, like, okay, well, we disagree. Well, where do we go from there? Like, to nullify... The same thing with Dean. Dean said the same thing. Like, to nullify your argument, all I have to say is, I disagree with you. That's it. Because it's subjective worldviews, right?
We're not giving
Can
you.
you- wait, I-
And also, to expand on this, it's not just that he's subjective about morality. Like, if you're subjective about morality, it's kind of like nihilism. You're subjective about everything. You then start becoming subjective about logic. You become subjective about whether other people exist, etc. Because behind every claim is not only epistemology, but there's also ethic, right? So, for example, logic assumes that the ethical imperative of following logical conclusions, right? If there's no ethical imperative to logic, there's no force, right? So, for Parker, his logic is also subjective now. And so is everything else. Consciousness, other people, any other transcendental, epistemology, etc. It's all subjective.
Tell me
Question.
why
I have a
it's
question.
wrong
I
morally,
have a question.
objectively,
Well, then
if I
I'll ask you
can
this
also
question.
counter it.
Can I ask you this question? Do you think that morality is true dependent upon God's stance or independent of God's stance? Do you think that morality is true dependent upon God's stance or independent of God's stance?
That's a very tricky way of saying the Euthyphro dilemma. So I actually talked about this in a debate with Nick and Dean. So the Euthyphro dilemma basically says, and this is like the actual version of it, I think he said it to make it a bit, like, to obfuscate it a little bit. The Euthyphro dilemma basically asks, is what's good because God commanded it, or is it good independent of God? That's basically Euthyphro dilemma, and the whole point is that if it's independent of God, it seems like you don't need God for morality. And if you say it's because God said it, it becomes arbitrary. It can differ from world to world. The answer is it's a false dilemma, and goodness is rooted in God's nature. Right? So, Euthyphro dilemma, very old argument, not a good one. Or dilemma.
Ultimately, it's grounded in God.
Okay, so it's
God
subjective.
is a subject. Yeah, God is a subject.
No, that's
so-
not a subjective argument.
Dean was doing the same thing. Like, bro, this is such a dumb, like, equivocal use of words subjective and objective. The whole point is, practically speaking, the point is that, let's get rid of all the equivocation. The point is that, independent of what I think or what you think, there is a moral standard. It is not something where it's just I feel this way, and it's my opinion according to my moral intuition and stuff.
The argument,
Wait, God is a
the argument is that
subject.
it's objective.
God's
And
a
the fact that a
subjective.
person
God is
makes an
subjective.
argument doesn't make the argument subjective. Your argument
God is
is
a
pure
subject.
subjectivism.
Is God a
Two
subject?
different things. It's a category error.
Is God a
How's that a
subject?
category?
It's
God, bro, like, all these books in the background, and I'm assuming Parker is, like, educated or whatever. Like, this is just such a dumb...
two different categories. A subjective argument for
We're,
ethics
we're
is
two different people too. Right?
different
How's it
than a
relevant,
person
right?
who's a subject making an argument. Those are two different
The point is that God is a
categories.
subject; he's not an object, right? We're subjects, right? We understand morality in terms of God.
That's,
In fact,
a
anybody can
that's you're
understand, right?
equivocating again.
Look, can we bring this
The
back
fact
to
that
the
God
point?
is
Wait, hold on, no, you want to run away?
That's
No, you
idiotic.
can't.
Wait, God having his particular view on morality is no different than me having my view because we're both subjects.
The ar-
Dude, the whole point is that God's transcendent, infinite consciousness. You are finite consciousness who has no access to universals beyond... Who has no access to universals at all. You have no access to anything beyond your own sense experience, so you cannot ground other people existing. You can't ground universal claims, which is required for morality to bind to anyone other than yourself. And even then, there's questions as to whether or not your morality can even bind to yourself in this system where you're in this box, okay? Like, this is such a low IQ role. Like, they keep it like, oh, it's subjective. There's a subject. Like, dude, that's not what we're talking about. Like, you're equivocating. You know, like Jay said, you're just equivocating. It's this category error. Thinking about the wrong thing. The whole point is there's transcendence in morality beyond human reason. Right? That's the whole point.
Argument
What
is that
subject
it's an
What is it, Jay?
objective
What is the
morality.
subject? Jay, what is the subject?
You're equivocating on the fact
What
that
is
a
the subject?
subject is making an argument versus the
do you
argument
think
being
objective
subjective.
No, you said
That's a
wait,
philosophical category error.
Jay, I
This
asked
is
you
like
if it's
talking
true.
to children.
I asked you.
It's a
I asked
category
you-
error, you idiot.
I gave you the youth throw dilemma. I asked you if it's true dependent upon a stance or independent of a stance. You said it's dependent upon God's stance. That's subjective by definition.
No, it's not. No, it's rooted in God's nature, and God's commands and what God says is a reflection of His nature. But the nature is the ultimate grounding for the morality. Right? So Dean and Parker, Euthyphro dilemma merchants in 2025. You're using the Euthyphro in 2025. That's crazy. But it doesn't work. But like that's just wild. You know, like screw all the new atheists. No, we're gonna come with our own thing. We're gonna dig up Plato's dialogue with Socrates and just say, Euthyphro dilemma. This completely debunks your moral system. I'm gonna completely rely on a equivocation of the word subject. I'm like, oh, it's a subject saying it. Completely missing the whole point.
I said that the argument for Christian ethics is not a subjectivist ethic, and because God is a subject, it doesn't make the system subjective. That's an equivocation
What do you think
error on
subjective
your
means,
part.
Jay? What is subjective?
Okay, so these people think that a word has a single meaning. It doesn't change depending on. This is one thing I realize about dumb people. I had in conversations. They don't understand that certain words can mean different things in different contexts. Like I've noticed that pattern. Like they just aren't able to understand that for some reason. It's very concerning because it's obvious to me, and other people just seem not to understand it.
Mean? What is subjective?
Purely
mean?
relative to the individual.
Okay, is God an
true
individual?
dependent upon a stance.
Is God an individual?
No, it's not true based on God's stance. It's true out of God's existence, God's nature. And God's stance, let's say commands, are a reflection of His nature. But the commands itself aren't what makes it good. The nature it's coming from is what makes it good. So he's youth for dilemma merchant.
That doesn't mean that the ethic is subjective. It's
Just
an
answer the
objective
question.
ethic. You're
Is
just
God an
rephrasing,
individual?
but you're substituting the word individual for subject.
I'm asking you if God is an individual.
you
Yes
did.
or no?
That doesn't mean that the ethics is subjective.
Yes
that's
or
a
no?
system and
Who's running now?
It's an
Is God an
epistemological
individual?
argument that's
Just answer the
different.
question.
Let me bring
Subject.
Andrew.
This is a
Andrew, you wanted
basic
to.
mistake.
Andrew, you wanted to get in here.
Jay's getting cooked, so he's
What
got
were you gonna say?
Jay's getting cooked.
You're making a dumb
Ask the
mistake of
question.
language.
Hang on. Let Andrew come in, please.
Yeah, so I mean, this is kind of obfuscating from the point. What does any of that have to do with the point of retard? So, and you being offended by
Come on, dude. You had the floor to completely explain the whole subjective equivocation thing and then go back to retard. Like, dude, I remember they have a debate about retard. Like, come on. Like, okay, retard, I think it's wrong to say. Well, I don't think it's wrong to say. Well, I believe in a subjectivist ethic. Okay, move on. Okay, let's talk about actually your ethic and your moral system. How about we actually talk about that? You know, get into like the smart philosophical high level conversation. Why are we going back to retard, bro?
Morality, are you listening?
yeah, hang,
What?
can you hang on? I'm talking to Parker, not you, Danny. Calm down.
I'm
Wait,
talking
you've
to
been cutting people
I
off this whole
I don't
time.
understand. I don't understand, Parker. When a friend of yours comes over and he says something to you, like you're in private, and he's like, "Hey, hand me that," and you toss it and you miss it, and he goes, "You retard." You literally stop the kind. You go, "Don't say that. It's very offensive."
This is kind of funny.
You do you say that? It's very offensive. I really don't like it when you say. Do you dress him
it's
down,
kinda
Parker? Yeah, if someone calls you a
No, no, no,
retard.
no, 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 no.
I'm
I would like to say
sorry, my
something.
mic cut out, so I couldn't hear you.
I want to post
Yeah,
something to
if
Andrew.
you have a
I wanna
friend,
post-
if you
Andrew.
have a friend,
I think it's wrong.
yeah. So I don't
Let
understand. like-
Let Danny.
really offends people. Would you go around just doing this to troll people?
Trans man who's having a baby objects to the word mother, and that's
Okay, whatever. I don't care about this stuff. We're in like a pretty decent territory with the whole decent, you know, not crazy. Because the whole subjective thing is so retarded. But yeah, there's a video. If you want to see more, check out the channel, subscribe for more, and join the Discord. I'm out. Aye, aye, aye.